So if you already know what you need to do to succeed, and you have everything you need to succeed, and you know which people you need to surround yourself with to succeed, then what's stopping you from succeeding? Bad habits. That's what we're going to talk about today. So along the path to self-improvement, an identity shift generally is what you're going to need to have, because if you already had the right identity, then you wouldn't need this whole process, right? You wouldn't need to change. We need to change because everything we've done up to now has only led us to what we currently have. And it's that dissatisfaction with what we currently have which compels us to go towards self improvement, right? In other words, we're unhappy with our shit position, so we know we need to make changes to improve it. So, one of the hardest things about making an identity shift is letting go of bad habits. So we have habits that are destructive and not conducive to growth, but we still continue to partake in them. And we can find it very hard to drop them. And I was thinking about this today, in regards to my own life, right? Like one of my own hardest habits to in fact, that I still struggle with is video games, right? So I enjoy playing video games, but I realized that it doesn't contribute towards my goals. Yeah, I do it anyways, right? And whenever I'm trying to stop playing video games, one of the biggest roadblocks that I create in my mind by myself is, well, you might as well finish this one, right? Like you've already spent so many hours, so you might as well complete it. Okay, so from Google, sunk cost fallacy is the phenomenon whereby a person is reluctant to abandon a strategy or course of action because they've invested heavily in it, even when it's clear that an abandonment would be more beneficial. So, in other words, it's carrying on with something because you don't want to waste the efforts you've already put in. So, a few examples in the real world are finishing a movie that you're not even enjoying, sticking it out at a job that you don't even like because you've already spent so much time there, you might get a promotion, completing a degree that you don't want to do, or eating unhealthy food or drugs that you just or taking drugs that you just happen to have, right? Even though you're trying to lose weight or quit the drugs, whichever one it is. So maybe you have some alcohol that you don't want to just throw away, you might as well use it up, right? Or maybe you have some tobacco that you want to smoke, but you're meant to be quitting smoking, but you don't want to waste this fresh 50 gram, right? It's understandable why we have this sunk cost fallacy because reality is inherently, or society inherently, is scarce. So the supplies that we have, we want to make sure that we utilize all of them. Every time we waste something or throw something away, effectively, we wasted the time we spent to work for the money that provided that. So at the base level, the one thing we don't want to do is waste our time because it's our most precious resource. In not wanting to waste our time, we waste more of our time by sticking with the things that aren't actually benefiting us, right? Right. So how do you beat this? Yeah, change of lighting because I started recording and then someone knocked on the door and I had to stop. It's kind of annoying. But how do we beat sunk cost fallacy, right? So it's very simple. We just have to set goals. When we set our goals, we can see our destination and we can see whether what we're doing aligns or doesn't align with our goals, right? So, for example, if I want to run, if I want to break Usain Bolt's record, right, then I know that there's certain dietary things that I can't do because they will move me further away from my goal, and certain exercise related things and practice related things I can do because they'll move me further towards my goal, right? Let me put a light on. So if you have goals that accurately depict the life you want to live, then it's very easy to move away from the things that um it's very easy to drop the things that don't move you towards that, even if it does mean that you lose investment. Because at the end of the day, if you injected heroin once and you had more heroin left over and you knew heroin was bad, you wouldn't just inject more, right? There's no sunk cost fallacy associated with things that you know to be detrimental to your life. So we need to make that association, right? So I'm gonna do this with you, and I actually recommend that you follow along and do this as well. What we're gonna do is first write down the goals that we have. So Just goals that you have for this year. Okay, so I wrote five here, but you can write however many you want. At this point, these goals that I wrote, they're not in the last video I spoke about writing goals that are things that you can actually action. So for example, making 100 videos, whatever. But this one here is about just the lifestyle changes you want to make and the person that you want to become. So when I say goals, I mean aspects of the person, your ideal self, right? So you have your goals, right? So with this goals, you can create what I call a framework. So anytime anytime we encounter or anytime we make a decision, we can consult our goals and we can think, okay, does this thing move us toward our goals or away from our goals, right? This is admittedly quite elementary, right? So whatever moves us towards our goals, we should do. Whatever moves us away from our goals, we don't do. But taking it a step further is understanding the difference between bad habits and leisure, right? So leisure is something that you do as a reprieve from your work. So for example, if you spend an hour reading or you spend an hour playing video or whatever it is, you know, if you spend an hour or whatever amount of time after you've already done your work, then that's leisure, right? Bad habits are things that you do at the expense of your work. So for example, procrastination, um, smoking when you're trying to be fit, or eating junk food when you're trying to be healthy, things that are actively moving you away from your goals. So we're not trying to eliminate leisure, we're trying to eliminate bad habits. And you have to make that distinction yourself. I can't do it for you, right? But understand that if you have high aspirations, for example, you want to be the best at something, most of the time there's someone working when you're not working. Every time you take your foot off the gas, someone didn't. So if you do have those aspirations, if your goals include being the best at something, then it's very important that you realize that sacrifice has to be made and the amount of time you have for leisure is going to be less. When you're setting your goals, think about the person that you want to become and think about um, the things that you're passionate about and what values you have. So now that we have our goals and now that we know what leisure is and what bad habits are, we can look at how we spend our time and start to eliminate the things that are bad habits. And no matter what the investment is, time, money, or otherwise, if we're serious about these goals, then you realize that these bad habits are things that we can't carry on doing. Every time you drink that drink, or every time you load up that game, or every time you watch that porn, or whatever it is, there's so many bad habits, right? Every time you indulge in these bad habits, you're pushing back the date of your identity shift, right? You're delaying it. So uh you need to internalize that and really start to work on identifying these bad habits and moving away from them. So what's my strategy, right? So a bad habit that I have is playing video games, right? I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember. Grew up in a very sheltered household where I wasn't allowed to, you know, be out and about when I was younger. And in not being able to do that, I spent most of my time inside playing video games as a kid. As I grew up, the only constant in my life basically was video games. That's always been around. I've always associated that with enjoyment, pleasure, relaxing. Um, so it's been one of the hardest habits for me come to terms with or even identify as a bad habit. The problem with quitting a bad habit is that it leaves a hole in your life. So you need to get the feelings that that bad habit gave you from something else. Now that we have our goals and our bad habits, we have to look at our bad habits and without attaching any emotion or judgment, we have to remove them. We have to drop them. Now, this is probably not the first time that you've tried to drop these bad habits. And the reason why it doesn't work is because you don't replace it with something else. So each of these bad habits is still something that you use as a means to an end. You're not doing the bad habit for the bad habit's sake. You're doing it to get some kind of response, whether that's physical, mental, or otherwise, right? So whatever that response is, you need to identify that and then seek it elsewhere. So, for example, with video games, for me, probably the accomplishment, like the planning and the optimization and all of these kind of things, right? This it's the skill expression that I found interesting. So the way that I took that, the way that I applied that to real life is by gamifying my life, right? And I'm gonna make a video about this. It's a very deep topic, one that companies use and have used for many years. One that's very effective at both life planning, but also in products, because the systems that make games fun are also systems that can make anything fun. And like I said, I'm gonna make a video about it. There are a lot of books on the topic, but the key takeaway is that you need to replace the bad habits with um, things that either lead you towards your goals or give you the response that you are craving in the first place. So, taking away from life without adding anything in return is just a bad strategy. It's not gonna work long term. It's just a short term strategy. So you can see your bad habits and you can see how much you'll gain by dropping them because of how much you're losing by investing into them. What do you do with all this extra invested capital? All of the extra resources that you get by dropping a bad habit, you should allocate back into your goals and achieving them. That's the whole point of dropping these bad habits in the first place. If you weren't worried about our goals, then there wouldn't be a problem with having the bad habits in the first place. So to recap, sunk cost fallacy is your enemy and probably your number one barrier to stop you from breaking your bad habits and really unlock your true potential. You need to set goals in order to defeat that sunk cost fallacy. Reevaluating your investments once you have set your goals will allow you to identify the bad habits. That is, once you see what the things are that lead you away from doing well, and see how to you can see what you need to drop. In order to maintain this lifestyle change long term, you need to replace the bad habits with good ones that give you the intended response. And finally, you need to create a path towards achieving the goals that you want. So each of the goals you've written down, you should really spend time on thinking every day, what are the things that I can do that move me towards my goals. As always, it's Danes. I just want everyone to be rich, man.